That was Light Trails by Daniel Chartrand. Daniel Chartrand is a friend of mine who is quite talented when it comes to producing electronic music. If you ask me, I like his stuff quite a bit, and wasn't able to get my hands on it for demo use for a little bit, but he's enabled some download links, and now I can share it with you. But so if you liked what you heard, go check out soundcloud.com/Daniel Chartrand, and I'll put that link in the video comments section. Just click the show more button in that section, and it'll be among the links that are there. So check that out. He's got all kinds of cool music to listen to. So that was Daniel Chartrand, Light Trails, and I am E.S. Wynn, and this is the Midnight Writer Podcast, episode number 8. I just got back a few hours ago from attending a raising at a fellow lodge. For those of you who are new to the program, I am a Freemason. For those of you who have heard that a million times and have heard me talk about Freemasonry quite a bit, you already know this. But I was recently raised to the 3rd degree, which is the final degree of Freemasonry, despite what you might have been told. And I was able to attend my first raising as a brother, as a visiting brother, instead of as a candidate here today or tonight. And it was definitely an interesting experience. It's for those of you who are involved in Freemasonry, I'm sure you know that it's a different experience undergoing a raising, being raised to the degree of Master Mason, than it is to sit on the sidelines and observe it, or even better, be able to participate in it. And there were a few points where I was able to participate in the ceremony or the raising itself, which was really cool because it allowed me to sort of be a part of that whole situation, which is neat. And for those of you who think that I'm being evasive or secret, literally pretty much all I was doing was walking around and being present in the area, in the lodge itself during the raising. So there's not anything there to hide. There you go, I've told you the secrets of Freemasonry. The dark, disturbing secrets of Freemasonry. There's a lot of walking around and sitting on the sidelines, trying not to fall asleep. Yes. So anyway, attended a raising. That was interesting. And other than that, I was contacted by a magazine whose name shall remain anonymous for the time being at their request until details are finalized, potentially hiring me to work here and there, submitting stories. I think that technically it falls into the category of freelance as like an independent contractor, but as a regularly tapped independent contractor. And once that agreement is finalized, unless they change their mind, but I don't think that they will, I'll be able to tell you all about it, and I'll even be able to tell you about some of the articles that I'll be working on, which is really exciting. So I haven't written articles for a magazine since I was working with Jim Idema's Hot Psychology magazine back in 2003, and that was a fun experience, an interesting one. I got out of it. I stuck with it for 3 years, and at that time I didn't write very fast, and so it was taking up a lot of my time. Just writing one article of about 2,000 words in length every month. One article a month, 2,000 words, and it was too much of a workload doing something I didn't really like doing, and I didn't really like doing it because I'm not really an article writer per se. I don't mind doing it now, but then it was a lot harder in those days. But then I've had 10 years to really polish my technique. So, but anyway, like I said, I stuck with Hot Psychology magazine for 3 years, and I was the technical editor, which is a fun job. Take a look online if you're ever curious as to what a technical editor does. Google that, and you'll find all kinds of interesting stuff. I wrote a number of articles about emerging technologies, which I later moved to hub pages. If you're curious about things like quantum teleportation or laser beams and how they are being used in industrial applications, and the potential for time travel and space planetary colonization, things like that, hop on over to my hub pages page at earlswin.hubpages.com, and there's all kinds of fun articles there, including those that I wrote for the Hot Psychology magazine when I was working with them, and also a number of other things that I've written over the years, including one called 101 Reasons to Stay Single. Heck, Google that, and that'll come right up too if you're curious. 101 Reasons to Stay Single is a fun one, because that particular one was written sort of after a breakup with the last woman that I was involved with before the woman I ultimately married, and it was written sort of for myself as a article that, or as a list of 101 reasons why I didn't want to sort of chase this woman back down. I was the one who ended that particular relationship, and for some reason I at the time would periodically think of that woman and think, well, did I make the right decision, and when I look back over the list of 101 reasons to stay single, I when I did that after the breakup, I thought, yeah, I made the right decision. So that's a fun article. Still gets a couple hundred views every day, and was actually picked up and optioned at one point by Vin DeBona, who the company that or the production company responsible for America's Funniest Home Videos. They were thinking about taking it and turning it into a TV show, so they actually optioned it. They bought it for a 6-month option, and ultimately didn't do anything with it. But it was exciting that I was approached out of the blue by these people, and that's the kind of thing that I really like the most. One of the things I think a lot of other writers and people like that don't realize is that I do like being approached, and I will turn down things occasionally. Occasionally I will turn down things. I've had a number of people over the years offer to have me help them work on book projects they've been tinkering with for years, or do long-term editing for free on magazines and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, thanks for the option, but it's a lot of work, and I've got lots of work already to do. But if there's money involved, as some of my listeners know, I can always could use a little more of that coming in. So if there's money involved, I'm more than happy to sort of move some of my other projects that I've been working on, personal projects, out of the way temporarily, to write articles for magazines or short stories for anthologies, stuff like that. Now, speaking of stories for anthologies, that's another thing that's cool. Recently got an invitation from a friend of mine, or it was sort of a heads up from a friend of mine that there was an anthology out there about time travelers and or fiction written in the vein of one of my favorite TV shows, Doctor Who, the longest running science fiction TV show in the world. Doctor Who, as some of you know, is approaching its 50th anniversary, which is very exciting. And there's an anthology being put out that's not Doctor Who per se, but rather a tribute to and inspired by Doctor Who. It's called 12, and it's being put out by Horrified Press. which is a small press, and my friend Mark Slade, who runs, as I've mentioned before, the wonderful Dark Dreams podcast, and also the Blackout City podcast featuring the adventures of Joe Smoke, which I narrate for. He actually passed the link on to me, and I'll include the link in the comments section below. And said, "Hey, this is right up your alley." And so I thought, well, I'll sit down for an hour and crank out something and see what people think. Send it on along, and almost immediately got a "here's a contract, yes please," which is pretty cool because, I don't know, maybe it's pride, but I like the fact that I've reached a point in my writing career, as it were, where someone can say, "I'd really like a story." And I can go, okay, and sit down for an hour, hour and a half, something like that, and, create something that's 1,000 or 1,500 words that people snap up like it's candy. And I like that. I'm honored that people who I have sent my stories to in the last year enjoy those stories so much, and it gives me such a wonderful feeling of pride, which is very satisfying and helps make me feel a little more, I would say, a little more important in my own right. And that can be a hard thing to come by when you're trying to make a living as a writer, and, well, not. At least not monetarily. But, anyway, so that's exciting though. I'm going to be featured in this upcoming anthology called 12, which will be really fun. I'm really enjoying being featured in some of these anthologies lately. It's making me want to get involved with more of them. And so if you run an anthology of some kind or another and you're looking for stories, or if you know somebody who is running an anthology and who's looking for stories, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can create something awesome to send your way. I think one of the ones that makes me proudest even still is the fact that last year I was able to get a story of mine published in Para Imminence, which is the latest Rayethu book, the latest book in the Rayethu mythos, created by my favorite author, Storm Constantine, and I am incredibly proud of that because not only do I have the book on my shelf, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, it's a book with my favorite author's name on it, and my story is right in there next to her story. It's right, and yet it's right there on my shelf. It's an incredible feeling. Whoever, think about it this way, it's like, who's your favorite author? Take a moment to think of who your favorite author is. Now, imagine that you had a chance to have a story of yours featured right alongside your favorite author's, one of your favorite author's pieces of fiction. I mean, it's an honor. I really enjoy it. But I'm going to stop tooting my horn because I don't want to come off as like some sort of arrogant ass, because I don't mean to be. But there are some things that I'm very proud of that have happened in the last 6 months or so that I don't know. It's hard not to reflect on with a fair amount of pride. And if there's anyone out there who's listening who feels like, well, I'm less than, or I never could be, or anything like that, and I do run across that. That's not just pride speaking. That's actual experience speaking. I've run across a number of people who literally look at the list of things that I have achieved and they give up. It's too big. It's too much. And what I would say to those people is, look, there's a reason why I keep pushing. I keep pushing and I keep creating and I keep reaching because I have a dream that I want to achieve. I want to be nothing but a writer and, of course, a husband, but professionally, career-wise, I only want to be able to get by as a writer. I want to be able to toss even the editing out the window. That would be cool. Voice acting is fun too. I like doing that too. I like doing these podcasts. I like doing the stories for Dark Dreams and for Blackout City, amongst other things. But to get to the point where everything is hobby, except for the writing, which pays all of my bills, and ideally all of my wife's bills, and ideally, gives me quite a bit that I can pack aside for retirement. That is my dream. That is what I am working towards. And I am so driven to obtain that dream as soon as possible that I have been willing to sacrifice almost everything, and I have been willing to drive myself to near exhaustion on a regular basis to sort of reach for that goal. And, that isn't necessarily what's required, per se. But, because I feel like I'll go into that in a second, how I feel about my career path and why it is where it is. But what I would say to those who feel like they could never achieve what I have achieved, what I would say is, don't see it as something that stops you. See it as inspiration. I finally, I think, turned a corner there with my wife, because when I first met my wife, she wrote pretty regularly. She's one hell of a poet. Hell, I fell in love with her when I read the first poem that she ever wrote me. It was so beautiful. I had to take it and show it to all these different people. I was at Sacramento State at the time, going to university, finishing up. I brought it with me to school and read it, right there to some of my fellow students. And they were like, wow, she's a keeper. She's one hell of a poet. But being around me and seeing how hard I've fought to, achieve my dream of being a writer, unfortunately kind of stalled her out in regards to her writing for quite a while. And it was just yesterday, I think, that we were having a conversation and talking about a book project that she had been working on years ago, before she ever met me, a book that she was working on and never finished. She was talking about it and told me that my inability to stop. No, that's not how she put it. I'm trying to think about how she put it. She put it along these lines: the fact that I persist, that I never give up, that I never slack in my drive, no matter the odds or the failure or the rejections that I come up against, inspires her. It makes her realize, instead of that all this work has to be done and you still don't achieve anything of note, as it were, at least monetarily, rather the fact that I keep going, the fact that I continue to strive, regardless of reward, regardless of the fact that I do still, from time to time, break down utterly and collapse and cry and just practically scream to the heavens, what the hell is going on? Why is it so hard to try to garner more than $100 a month, or thereabouts? Why is it so hard to try to make a living in the arts? I keep going. Even still, I keep going with the same fervor and intensity, and it's taken, and that inspires her. And I would say that is what people should take away from my rush towards what I consider to be the perfect career. Be inspired. Realize that we all have incredible, untapped resolves of strength within us that we can, focus on and bring forth, that can carry us through some of the most intense hardships. And I'll tell you, every book that I release is an intense experience. I wouldn't go so far as to call it necessarily a hardship, but each book, in a sense, could be likened to at least a shadow or an echo of the process of creating life that women go through. And I'm not going to say that writing a book and putting it out there and viewing the reception of the text is equal in pain or effort to a woman giving birth or carrying a child. Not whatsoever. That's why I say it's like a shadow or an echo of that. Because while you might carry a child for 9 months, dealing with all the crazy changes it does to one's body, the fact that it actually physically manifests on the body, and then you have to give birth to this creature that, well, that was a poor way to put it, this creature. You give birth to this new life, and you feed it from your body, and there's an incredible amount of pain involved in the process of passing this child into the world. I'm not going to pretend that writing a book and putting it out there is the same whatsoever, but I do believe that it is similar, that it is a shadow, even if only a pale shadow of that experience, in that it requires a lot of work. You have to be willing to sit down at a keyboard and not just create a story that is interesting to others, but interesting to yourself as well. Something that is so interesting that you are willing to sit down and type and type and type for hundreds of hours so that you can create something that is at least 50,000 words in length. And to create something of that magnitude, to devote so much of your life to it, it practically changes you. It is one hell of an experience. And then when you finish it, and you put it out there into the world, and no one reads it, no one even shows that they care. You put it online, you shove it everywhere you can, and it doesn't get even the smallest amount of, feedback of any kind. No one reviews it. No one gives it a like on Facebook, for example. No one shares it. No one gives it more than a passing glance, if that. That is like postpartum depression, or at least what I know of it. Because, wow, you've put all that time into that project. It's you. It's a piece of you. And you've created it, partly, I suppose, in the hopes that it might bring in money. But I think that more of it is because you want to share the book with the world. You want to share that story with the world. And when the world has no interest at all to even give it a try, to even see if they like it, I'll tell you, every time I put a book out there, I go through a day or two where I am in the most intense depression that I ever am in. The most intense depressions that I ever feel come immediately after launching a book. And I've gone through that 44 times in my life, and I'll probably go through it more times in the future. And, before you draw any judgments, those who are new to the program, it's not a situation of, I suck as a writer or something like that. It's literally no one cares. And it sounds kind of almost, pedantic to put it that way. No one cares. But that literally is pretty much the truth. And I'm not saying that out of any kind of, oh, woe is me, feel sorry for me. I'm not trying to garner pity here, I'm saying that is something that you have to deal with, especially when you're when you're putting your books out through a small press, an independent press, or you're independently marketing them. And it's not as easy as just, walking down the street and giving someone a manuscript to get published by a big company. Being published by someone like Penguin, by one of the big six, is almost impossible. unless you know the right people and a lot of other things line up. It doesn't have anything to do with the quality of your writing. And anyone who's read Twilight, and I hate to harp on Twilight, but that is probably the most familiar bomb that was ever dropped on the literary world. Twilight is an example of the fact that it has nothing to do with quality. It has to do with being at the right place at the right time, and also knowing the right people at the right time. And people who are independent do get picked up. So if you're an independent author, or if you're considering being an independent author, I would say go for it. It does happen. Amanda Hawking is a classic example of that. If you don't know who Amanda Hawking is, type in Amanda, and her last name is spelled Hockking. Check her out on Google. She's on Facebook too. There is an overnight success story of an independent author. It does happen, and you have to be willing to work at it. I think she had gotten up to 20 books before lightning struck, in a sense. And that's really how it is. Whether you're independent or whether you're going with one of the big six, it really is lightning striking. But don't let that dissuade you. If you're writing, if you're trying to make a career out of writing, the only thing that you can do is keep going. If you give up, you preclude any chance for things to get better. And that is one of the reasons why I have driven such a breakneck pace for so many years. That is the reason why. Because I know that if I stop, it will end, in a sense. I will have given up. And to give up, in a sense, invalidates everything that's come before. And I can't do that. I can't let all those years of work be in vain. I'm willing to continue this path. I'm willing to put the effort out there. And God forbid, should somebody with some money or some connections come forward and say, I need you. And this has happened a little bit here and there to me. Like I said, Vindabona, Redux, that's another one. I did celebrity consulting. I was a celebrity being consulted for Redux TV for a short period of time, about 6 months. I was approached by that magazine, which I can't mention the name of at the moment. Things like that. Powerful people do approach you eventually, and it takes time. And should someone do that, I am more than happy to, embrace that. And if I stop, then it's not going to happen. That's kind of the way I look at it. And that's the way I think all independent authors, and authors who are looking to be picked up by the big six at some point, that is the way they should look at these things. That's the way they should look at their career. Don't give up. If I can write 44 books over the course of 6 years, you can write at least half that. And that may be all it takes. Even one book may be all it takes for you to rocket to fame, or see some sort of success, or be able to do writing as a career, or voice acting, or anything that you're doing. You just have to be persistent. And that's all there is to it. And I'm not saying that persistence will make the road easy either. One of the things I tell a lot of young writers who I've talked with, who have asked me for advice over the years, is it's a hard market. It is a hard road. The only way I can tell you how hard it is to say, sit down, close your eyes, and in your mind imagine the hardest, most difficult path through writing towards the career that you want, that you can. Imagine the most difficult road that you can, to get from here to becoming the kind of author that you want to be. The most difficult road. Now multiply that times 100, and you're getting close to how difficult it is. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Even if you only have 10 minutes a day to write, don't give up. You never know when it's going to take off. I'm serious. And yes, if you have the time and the inclination to write 20 or 40 or 80 books, there will be most of those, especially if you don't know the right people, and most of us don't. Most of those books will go totally unread. I've sold 2 copies in my entire life of a book I wrote last year called Skin Dreams. 2 copies. That's it. I don't know if either of those copies was ever read. There's no way to tell whether the book sucks or whether it's awesome, because no one's read it. And I don't say that out of spite or any sense of, pity me. I just say, as an example, some of the books you write will go totally unread. And that is the hardest part of the path. It's hard to write a book. It's hard to pour that much of yourself into a project for that long. And it's even harder when it's never even given a chance. But if you can weather that, if you can get through the dismissal, the people who do not care, the people who could give a crap whether you write a book or not, if you can get through the self-doubts that come up around this sort of thing, if you can get past the depressions which will ultimately rear their heads after several books of yours go totally unread, then you've got a shot at success. And like I said, I do not say this to dissuade you. I say this because it is the truth, and it should inspire you, because now you have a roadmap. You have a map that you can follow that will lead you where you want to go. And that's what this is. That's what these words are meant to be. A roadmap. That's all. I don't know what the future holds for me. Sometimes I think about things that are coming down the line in my future. I think about, and I've mentioned this before, but I think about my student loan, for example. Right now I'm making enough that I can pay it and have money left over. Not a lot, but there is a certain amount of pride that comes from the fact that all of the money that I'm making comes from my writing. And I'm able to pay my debts with it. I'm able to pay my bills with it. And I'm able to set aside a little bit of money to do fun things with. Like I mentioned in the last one, embracing that Robotech Kickstarter thing. Buying the goods, as it were, through the Kickstarter thing, so that I can enjoy some time with my friends. And that's when that comes out, here in December. When I get the kit, I'll be doing that. And I'll be going up to my hometown of Sonora with my home-built cardboard city, as it were, and playing a round or two of that with my friends, because that's enjoyable. But in the future, next year, for example, who knows what the future holds? And that is a hard thing for me, too. I think about what the future might hold. I think about all the horrors and pains and obstacles and hurdles I might have to work my way through just 1 year from now. And I don't know, maybe I'm neurotic, but it gets to me sometimes. It keeps me up sometimes, keeps me awake sometimes at night. And that can be difficult. I hope for a good future. I've had plenty of people tell me that I'm a shining star who's going to succeed and that success is right around the corner. Maybe it is. I hope it is. I'm ready for it to be. But I really have no idea what the future brings. And as I've mentioned before, when my student loan literally triples in monthly cost in just 1 year's time, if I'm only making the amount of money that I'm making now, I won't be able to pay it. I may have to give up this career. And that scares the shit out of me. Not for any reason other than the fact that I love this career. And I have fought for years to keep this career going. And to have it snuffed out by some arbitrary banker's whim. You know. It's very frustrating. But no one knows what the future will bring. Hell, I could get rich tomorrow. You know, any of us could. You could. You could wake up in the morning with $1 million in your bank account. We all put things out there. We all have friends. We all have connections. And all it takes is for one of those connections to sort of surge with life, as it were, and miracles can happen. I'm waiting for my miracle. And I have my own theories as to why I am where I am monetarily. And I'm not bad off. I take care of my debts. I have enough food to eat. I don't put anyone else in the lurch. That's all we can really ask for, I suppose. But my theories range from the material to the metaphysical. If you're looking for a material explanation, one could say that it all comes down to luck and exposure. The right people haven't seen me yet, and it would be sort of blind luck for someone who likes my work to share it on some digital medium or mention it at some party, and the right person sees it. You know, blind luck. Not only do events come together to converge to create a situation where someone mentions my work, but also they mention it where it happens to get back to somebody who has money, who is interested in sort of promoting it and perhaps taking a percentage. I don't know. You know, or hiring me, for example, to do what I'm doing. And like I said, it has happened before on a small scale. Perhaps tomorrow it'll happen on a larger scale. Perhaps next week. Perhaps next month. Perhaps never. Materially, in regards to physical reality as we understand it, as science understands it, it all comes down to luck. And everything that I do, that I put out into the world, these podcasts, for example, sort of widen the chance that eventually the right person might see the right thing, and all the cards will fall into line. There are also metaphysical explanations that I think of that may be right, may also just be, you know, the ponderings of wishful thinking. When I think of the metaphysical explanations for having written 44 books and not having any sort of real fan base rise out of that, that I know of. You know, no one feeling inclined to take a chance on my work. I think the metaphysical explanation could be something like, I've always believed that we have lessons that we learn while we're here, in a sense, in physical form. Whether you're Christian or pagan, and I grew up with Christians on one side of my family and pagans on the other, or any other religious affiliation, a lot of spiritual philosophies teach the idea of humans being tested by divinity or by spirit or by themselves, learning lessons, you know, as it were. And there's a part of me that wonders the way things have worked in the past in my life, if perhaps I just haven't learned the necessary lessons, if perhaps there are things that I'm still learning in my life that once learned, or once I progressed to a certain level of expertise or maturity in one way or another, that is when things will come together. And I like to think that they will come together. I like to think that that is the future that is ahead of me, a future of success. And, I don't mean going out and buying a $20 million house or anything ridiculous like that. My idea of success is much different than most people's. To be a rampant success, in my mind, is to be able to own a home. And it doesn't have to be a big home. I'm thinking something 3 bedrooms, 2 bath would be perfect. 3 bedrooms so that I can have an office and a guest bedroom so that we can have people over and they don't have to sleep in the living room. Something with a little bit of land. And by a little bit of land, I mean I could do with an acre easily. An acre would be big enough for me to grow all the fruit trees that I want to grow. And that's sort of a goal of mine. That to me would be to be a rampant success. To be able to make enough money that I could support my wife and I and pay for her to be able to go back to school. That would be, in my mind, being able to be a rampant success. Here in California, I don't know, everybody who's listening to this is probably living in a different state. But here in California, the standard of living costs quite a bit more than it does in many other places in the U.S. I remember when I was living in Oklahoma, I was paying $350 a month for rent, and that was considered expensive at the time. This was 2005. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I remember that a couple of friends and I at Spartan College were looking at houses. And there were a number of houses in Tulsa that were only $30,000. And we were talking about how it might be doable, how potentially we could, turn our student loans around and invest as a group in a piece of property. Here in California, if you want a dinky 1-bedroom apartment, it's $700 a month at least. At least. I have a friend who's paying $1,200 a month for a side bedroom in San Francisco, and he considers himself to be lucky. Property values are in the hundreds of thousands, if not approaching $1 million. To me, the idea of being able to make even $50,000 a year off of my writing in this environment of California, that would be a rampant success in my mind. I could be happy, very happy. I could support my wife entirely and send her back to school and do everything that I want to do and pay for every bill that could conceivably cross our path on $50,000 a year. That is something I aim for, and I would be incredibly grateful if that comes to pass. And I think there are a lot of people I've talked to who believe that it's kind of a modest goal. Only $50,000? Well, I'd shoot for higher than that. Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't take more. The more that I got, the more that I would give away. And that's not just because I'm a Mason, but it's also because that's the way I've always felt. I've always felt it's good to give away money to causes. I've always had all kinds of ideas about things that I'll do when I have the money to do it. Some of my favorite websites are places like Kickstarter. I invested in the Robotech thing, which is not exactly indie. But Kickstarter is full of indie projects that I can invest in when, the money is more available. I have a plan written down. I have a bucket list of things to do when I have the money to, when I'm making more than $150 a month. They fall along the lines of things like going and supporting local mom and pop shops, for example. Going to the local comic book store and just dropping a big chunk of money on her. Here you go. I've always wanted to do that. I could go and spend that money and get more stuff on Amazon, sure, but why would I do that when, if the money is there, and it only costs a few more dollars to buy it from the hobby shop down the street, why not support the mom and pop store? That's something, and I'm getting something for it as well. Or going out there and seeking out independent authors who have gone unread. No one's even given them a try. And using my money and my time to buy their books and give them reviews. This is the kind of thing I want to do. I want to be able to live in a future where I have the money and time, the resources, in the broadest sense of the word, to make positive change in ways that would have made me happy, or that make me happy. So spreading things that make me happy around to others in the world. In my own life, I don't really lean more towards the material or the metaphysical explanations for why I am where I am, as it were. But I do give them equal credence. I do believe that it's as likely that it's blind luck, even bad luck in a sense. It's just an improbable, absolutely improbable chance that after this long, with this many books, I will still be this unknown. I think that's just as likely as the fact that it's being, in a sense, held back meticulously, intricately, not like on a large and clumsy human scale, but through little things here and there. The sort of gold is being held back until I reach the point where I'm ready for it. And I like to think that I'm ready now, but apparently I'm not. And until I am, I'll continue to do what I'm doing in the hopes that what I'm doing will hasten my approach to that beautiful future that I believe is out there and that I like to think is out there. I mean, similar things have happened before. I remember a period where I believed that at one point in my life, in the past, I believed that I was, how do I put this, unlovable, ugly even, that no one would ever be interested in me, and I tell people that these days, and I get some of the strangest looks. These looks like, what? No, that's stupid. You just didn't find the right people. And I think back to that, and I think about how suddenly my wife and I reconnected, and how solidly our relationship has come together. And it makes me think of this whole idea of not being ready necessarily until and not really receiving this golden future that you hope for or reach for until you are ready. I was desperately trying to sort of reach out and find anyone that would be interested in me. I chased all kinds of women, and almost unilaterally, and this is the truth, this isn't just something they told me, they almost all turned out to be lesbians. I don't know what that says about me, that I tend to chase after women who turn out to be lesbians. But, one could look at it and say, from a metaphysical point of view, and say that this is sort of, an intricate way in which the universe held back that which I was not ready for. You could even look at it as a guardian angel. The guardian angel was out there, if you're Christian. The guardian angel knew that my wife was out there waiting for me, and made sure that I didn't fall into any pitfalls before I got there. That's one way to look at it. You could look at it entirely materially too. Say that maybe, I hadn't learned courtship properly, as it were, human courtship, or that it was just bad luck that I tended to gravitate towards lesbians who had no interest in me whatsoever. But however you look at it, it is interesting that as soon as I finished university, as soon as I graduated from Sac State, the day I graduated, literally the day I graduated, I fell head over heels in love with the woman I would marry, or I have married now. And so did she, and we haven't spent a single day apart since that night. And it will be 3 years together on May 21st. I don't know. People might say, it's only 3 years. Maybe. Maybe I'll look at it that way in the future, and I'll look back and think, God, how silly I was. Maybe I shouldn't have ever recorded that podcast and, put myself out there ascribing some sort of metaphysical, quality to something that's actually very ordinary and material in nature. I don't know. I doubt it. I don't like to think that things will come together that way. I like to think that my wife and I will be, old folks together sitting on, porch swing, having a wonderful time. Or even better, that technology might get to the point where before we have a chance to sort of shuffle off this mortal coil and journey to that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, that technology might get to the point where we can have our youth restored, and then we can have hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, together, as we were in our early 20s. That could be a lot of fun. I like to think that that's, a possible foreseeable future, that there will be a point where we'll be able to sort of have our bodily cells rejuvenated, and that could be a lot of fun. I think I would like to be able to embrace eternity with eternal youth. Not that vampire shit, but, like actual eternal youth with the woman I love. And could be interesting, or it would be wonderful. Would absolutely be wonderful. But that is a long way away. And the gulfs of time between now and even 1 year from now are massive. Massive. Yes, in retrospective, time looks very short. We look back on, our childhood and we think, oh God, how fast 10 years goes. But you look ahead and you think about all the little periods of time in which you can wedge projects. Every little gap of 10 minutes that you might spend sitting and thinking, or staring at the wall or watching TV. These vast numbers of short periods that you could spend working on your future, writing a book, writing poetry, drawing, if that's your thing. There is so much time and so many ways in which things can go right or wrong or stay the same. Hell, we could all be dead tomorrow. I could be dead tomorrow. The people I care about could be dead tomorrow. Or, as is likely, life could shuffle on this way for decades, with little scares here and there, little irritations, little frustrations, little periods where, we all sit down with our finances or our life plans or our guidance counselors or whatever it is we're dealing with, and try to plot a course for the future, a clear course, only to realize later on, months down the road, that it was just wasted time. That the only purpose it served was to quiet our panic, panicking minds, our doubts. Kind of brings to mind something that they teach in Masonry. Not implicitly, not as like a primary thing. In fact, I know plenty of Masons, I've mentioned this too, who have they're like, I never thought of it that way. But one of the things that's brought up in Masonry, which seems like a very critical lesson for anyone, is that failure and pain and these sorts of things we only truly fuck up as individuals, and I'm using that word on purpose, when we panic, when we do not trust, uh, I want to say in God, but regardless of what spirituality you have, even if you have none at all, it's only when we do not trust that things really get screwed up, that we really screw things up ourselves. I'm not saying you should trust everyone. I'm not saying you should go down the street and find a huckster and trust him. I have trusted plenty of people in my life who have screwed me over. Heck, when my wife and I had a car that just this year that it was so old and so beat up, we were gonna have to put about $10,000 into it just to make it smog legal, which is ridiculous. Or we could turn around and pick up a new car with monthly payments. And a car, if you ever want to develop trust issues, which I don't know why anyone would, but if you ever wanted to develop trust issues, go to a dealership, a car dealership. The guy that we were dealing with lied through his teeth the entire time. Lied, and smiled the whole time. He told us things like, oh yeah, it comes with free satellite radio for life, and oh, you want to try to get the lease. We didn't get the lease because it was more money. And I'm glad we didn't, because we've already put more than enough miles on it that we probably would invalidate the lease, or at least be charged extra. He said, oh, your insurance will be half the price than it is now. Lied, and smiled the whole time. And I'm not saying that you won't run across people in your life who are like that, but sort of trusting your intuition, trusting that there is a plan, in a sense. And I'm not talking about unyielding fate. I'm not talking about, stuff that you can't get away from, because I do believe, and it has been my experience, that if you don't like what's going on in your life, and you really make an effort to shake loose of it, whether it's good or bad, you will shake loose of it. You do have control over your life. Things do change. But if you trust, if you sort of consign yourself to the wisdom of whatever's out there, if anything, even if it's just your own subconscious, you might run headfirst into mud puddles, or the ocean, or a bramble patch, something that'll hurt you. But ultimately, when you come out the other side of that lesson, when you come out the other side, when you trust the path, it leads you somewhere far more glorious than you were in the past. That's been my experience, and that's something Masonry teaches us over and over again. Freemasonry has this wonderful way of offering it through, like I said, not implicitly, but rather through reference, in different ways and in different symbols. This idea that you need to place your trust, as they put it, in God. And keep in mind that Masonry is not a Christian organization. They embrace all faiths, but they use the term God to put a label on a greater spiritual consciousness, in a sense. So regardless of what your religion is, you can substitute your own deity or, sense of higher mind. I like to use the term universe. You can put it in there, in that place. If you trust the universe, it won't drop you. It's like that whole footprints thing. I'm sure lots of people have seen the footprints in the sand thing. That where there was only one set of footprints is where I carried you. That allegory, in a sense, exists to teach us that we aren't ever dropped in a sense. We all go through hard shit. We all do. Bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. Good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen. They do. To everyone. They cannot be escaped. No amount of prayer is going to keep you from going through bad things. What I would say is that when you go through a bad thing, when life throws you a yellow snowball, as it were, don't look at it necessarily as a slight, from God or from the universe or from Allah or whatever you want to say. It's not a slight. It's keeping you on your toes. That's the way I look at it. I look at it as a situation where you're being kept on your toes. You're being tossed these things so you learn how to deal with them and with things that are far more difficult to deal with that come in the future. I like to think, and I have seen evidence of this in my own life, that the hardships we deal with prepare us to deal with situations in the future that we would not be able to deal with otherwise. And we may believe when something hard comes along that we do not have what it takes to deal with it. But we do. We always do. We're never given anything in terms of a challenge that we can't do, that we don't have the tools already to be able to do. Aleister Crowley put it in this way. He said, "Every man and woman is a star." And though I am not a Telemite, and I'm not a member of the OTO, and I don't hold any real special reverence for Crowley, I consider him merely a curiosity, not to offend anyone who might think that he's really awesome. That's just my own perspective. I do like that statement. I do think it speaks to a reality of the human experience. You're a star with all the wonder and glory that entails. And even materially, even speaking entirely on a material level, embracing science and scientific knowledge wholeheartedly, you are a star. You're not necessarily, a huge ball of burning gas. Not whatsoever. But you are composed of materials that were ejected from stars, from our own star. And that's pretty amazing. It's almost like there's a line there where spirituality and science can sort of mingle. But I'm starting to ramble, and I'm tired, and I don't want to bore anyone. So I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed the piece by Daniel Chartrand in the beginning, and I hope you enjoyed this little episode. I enjoyed it. I enjoy making these. And if you have any questions of any kind, anything that you're curious about, as long as it's clean, it's not, what color was the dump you took last night? There are lots of places where you can leave questions and I can address them in a future podcast. You can leave them in the comments section of this YouTube video or any of my other YouTube videos. There's also a link in the video comments section where it says show more. You click that show more and there's a link in there where you can drop off questions. You can even put in there that you want it to be anonymous if you don't want people to know, who you are when you ask a question. But I'm always open to questions. I'm always open to projects, and if I shoot you down when you approach me, don't take it to heart. I am busy, and I do pick up quite a few projects that are offered to me, but not all of them. And especially if they're long-term projects. Short-term projects, little things I can do here and there when I have time, I like those. Long-term projects, those are difficult for me, And open-ended projects, I think, fall more into the category of short-term. Podcasts, for example. I can stop these at any time. All I have to do is say, I don't have time, I'm done. Ideally, it'll never get to that point, but you never know. Something that ropes me in for months with no way out, that's a little different. But shorter stuff, or lots of shorter projects, I'm always open. So send your questions, your projects, those sorts of things to my link it's in the video comments, or drop a line in the comments section of this video, and I'll get back to you, and I'll address it in a future podcast. But anyways, this is the Midnight Rider podcast, episode number 8. I'm ES Win, and the reason why this podcast is called the Midnight Rider podcast is because I am an author. I write, and I sleep during the day, and I write all night long. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I hope you catch the future ones. And if you haven't heard the ones from the past, you can check up on those too. All the episodes from the past are still available here online, here on YouTube. So take care, and have a wonderful evening or day, or whatever time it is for you where you are at the moment.